to the back, ayy. Got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the lane moving fast, ayy. Let them all cross. If they hate, then let them hate and make a bigger boss, ayy.
This episode is brought to you by SPI Logistics, the premier freight agent logistics firm in North America. For over 40 years, SPI has been diligently building the most successful freight agent network to provide first-class relationships for our shippers, receivers, and carrier partners. We are more than another transportation network. We are a dedicated team of professionals united by one singular purpose, and that is to expedite our agents' success. All of our agents are set up for success on day one, as they are provided with a full suite of support staff that is ready to assist them with everything from after-hours emergencies to financial and administrative needs on a no-fee basis. This way, you can focus on continuing to grow your business. There is no financial risk to start, and you have the ability to earn up to 75% in commissions. If you are looking to take control of your financial future and build your business with the backing of one of the most successful logistics firms in North America, visit www.spi3pl.com to learn more. Do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you. Hey guys, before we jump into the episode, I wanted to let you know it is brought to you by the NMFTA. Let me ask you a question. Do you ship LTL freight? Then listen up, because the NMFC changes went live on July 19th, and they're the biggest updates in the history of freight classification. Now more than ever, accuracy matters. That's why carriers, shippers, and brokers alike are turning to Class IT Plus, the NMFTA's new digital platform for real-time NMFC data. Stop guessing, start classifying smarter, and quote freight with confidence. It's time to get your ship together because the NMFC changes are already here. Learn more at nmfcchanges.com and get started with Class IT Plus at classitplus.com. Just do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. As you can see, we are live here today. It's TIA Capital Ideas Conference Day 1. And I got a very special guest for you guys here today. I've been following them for a while online and seeing the progression of on the digital side of freight, and let alone everything in freight. I got Mr. Bill Driegert on the show today. So Bill, thank you so much for taking the time to join me.
Thanks for having me.
No, so I like leading in with this all the time. Obviously, you've been in the industry for a while, but like, what brought you into freight?
So it was actually Jeff Silver from Driegert of Logistics. I met Jeff at school, and I, at the time, was working for PepsiCo. And
Okay.
at PepsiCo, I was in a role that today would be like a data scientist. I was building production planning models, very kind of into the weeds. And Jeff sold me on this vision of Brokerage because he wanted to start Driegert of Logistics. We didn't have a name then, but it was an idea in his head. And this was 3 years before we started it. He said, hey, in 2006, I'm going to start Driegert of Logistics. You should join. And I trusted that he could do it because I trusted his entrepreneurship. He'd done it before. And of course, it all worked out. But I came on as the fourth employee at Driegert of Logistics, and that was my trial by fire into the world of freight, and spent 8 years building that up.
So what was it like in the early days out there? Because it's like, everybody, obviously the silver name in freight is synonymous with freight brokerage that's out there, especially Jeff building up everything there. And, what was that like in the early days?
It's just like any brokerage. It's just everybody's got to be on the phones. Everybody's selling freight. And, when you build a freight brokerage, first it's just getting loads on the board. So you're calling those highly price sensitive shippers, the plastics companies, the paper companies. I remember back then too, Jeff had already gone through one round of this, so he had a little bit more money than probably a typical broker founder. So we would we would charter a jet and actually fly in to go to like Manistee, Michigan, or Hartford City Paper, meet with these companies and understand and just try to get that freight on the board and get that initial seed going. It was also very much a tech. I mean, my journey has very much been about technology in the space, and Jeff had a tech vision out of the gate. So when I joined, actually, I did a lot of engine development and engineering, coded part of the system. Was always on that side, as well as he also put all of us onto the floor, made sure that we understood how to book freight. But it was, I think, like any broker, high energy, like everybody was getting in at 5:30 a.m. and staying
Yeah.
until 6 p.m. and just grinding that every single day and making sure every load was covered and just getting loads on the board and building it at the same time while we were building a system on the back end of Bazooka, which was very innovative at the time.
Yeah.
In terms of what that had for capability.
So when you took that, and then you were at Uber Freight as well, what, like having as much experience as you do on the freight tech side of things and seeing it, what are kind of some of those synergies that you see in today's environment that were applicable back then? Because it's like, I think a lot of individuals, Bill, think that tech is just going to come in and save everything. And they missed the fundamental aspect of this industry that, at least it's been there for me in the entirety of my 20-year career in freight.
Yeah. I think the fundamentals from the beginning are the same, and that there's people in the middle of the process, right? So there's always relationships that are built. There's unique needs of each individual shipper. All that stuff remains. What's happened with the tech is really, when we were building Bazooka, it was really about making the broker more efficient.
Yeah.
And then over time, with the digitalization of Uber Freight, it became about, okay, well, how do we get into the hands of the carriers? How do we get more external? How do we make this whole network? And how do we start automating a lot of what's happening in the broker floor? And now I think what you're seeing with AI is just a fartherance of that same journey. I think the challenge in the space, and I've always said that, is it takes a long time to drive change. Why does it take a long time? Because relationships are sticky and processes are sticky and people don't like to change things if they don't need to, but also because freight's already a pretty mature industry, meaning usually when we're talking about driving savings, and I was talking to a broker just the other day who said, I've already implemented all the AI I can. I think I'm like, I don't know what else to throw at it.
Yeah.
And as a result, the actual automation was still pretty shallow in terms of maybe you're getting 20, 30% savings. And C.H. Robinson's talking about 30% savings in total headcount. But if you think about that, well, you still got 70% work left. And it's going to get harder and harder as you move down and try to continue to chip away at that. And you really have to start thinking about re-engineering the whole process. And to be frank, all brokers, all shippers, all carriers aren't quite ready for that yet. Maybe there's not a motivation and they're already in a place that works. And so why change? So it's going to take time. And that's where also, from a broker perspective, the relationships always matter. If you understand how they operate, what you bring to the table, what capabilities you can push along with them, and then they're looking for advisors too. The shippers are all trying to figure this out as well.
Yeah.
So if you're a broker, it's like, how do you work hand in hand with your shipper to drive efficiency and to give them the savings they're looking for?
Where's that bottleneck that you've seen? You're talking about, like with the 30% automation, there's still 70% left. Do you see it going any further than this? Because it's like, I see it as every shipper is unique in their own right in how they operate, how they tender freight. And I think like that's one of those things that I see freight tech maybe struggling with is because you can't force everybody into the same box. And I think that's where a lot of SaaS products, AI really accelerate is if it's doing repeatable things that are the exact same across the board. So do you think that that's one of those areas where that's where the opportunity actually might be in AI or tech is like a universal platform that does mold to each individual company?
Yeah, I do think that's the opportunity. And that's the direction some of the AI startups, I know Pallet pushes this quite heavily, that they are learning skills, and those skills are particular to each individual company. Well, I think it's true of many of the companies stepping in the space, is that as they build their agents, they're tailoring those agents for the specific need of each individual company. But again, a lot of it just comes back to that individual process complexity. So, at DAT, of course, we're now, they acquired Convoy platform. That's when I came along. We're pushing. That's an automation solution as well for brokers. When we did the Convoy acquisition back at Flexport, one of the things that I looked at almost immediately was trying to understand, okay, well, what was their cost to serve? They actually kept really good data, and they had a great model for calculating by customer how much it cost per load for them operationally. And the variance was between $13, where it's almost totally automated, all the way to $275. And that's $275 a load, even with all the automation, all the capabilities. And why is that? It's because of the complexities of the shipper, their particular SOPs, their particular requirements, and all the processes that they had to support around that. And that's always going to be driven by the shipper's particular requirements and understanding that. But I do think AI accelerates that. I mean, that's one of the advantages, is that it can parse through some of this unstructured information. You can feed it your SOPs. It can make sense of that. It can start to learn skills that are customer specific and push farther down that curve of automation.
So why is the Convoy platform at DAT different than Convoy as a company?
Convoy as a company was a broker. Convoy platform is neutral. We brought it to all the brokers. So we took
for
the tech,
sure.
yeah.
But I think that's one of
Yeah.
those big things out there. And I'm sure that's one of the things that you guys probably deal with on a daily basis
Yeah.
is how is this not competing with me as a broker? So can you talk about that a little bit further on like what the capabilities of the Convoy platform at DAT is?
Yeah. So when this was a vision of mine, even back to when we were at Uber Freight, I always thought, well, this tech will really get leverage once it's more broadly distributed across the industry. I think the thesis with both Uber Freight and Convoy is they thought, well, we can just use it ourselves and build a company. But there's all sorts of reasons that just doesn't work. And I think the fundamental reason is you have to be a tech company and provider. And it's very hard to manage both and get the leverage out of one to drive the investment you need to make in the other, which is the tech. So when we made the acquisition of the Convoy tech, one, we didn't buy the business. We only bought the tech. So we knew we were going to take this platform. And right out of the gate, it was very clear that this was going to get a lot more value in the market. And we could make the right level of ongoing investment in it if we brought it to all brokers. And ultimately, I knew that that's how we're going to help push the industry forward. And also that this is just where the industry needs to be going, which is ultimately, if it's not us, it's going to be somebody else. A lot of companies have stepped in this space. And clearly at DAT, we have a unique position to be able to bring this across the marketplace and automate every load. So that was the thinking. And it's the other analogy I always use is the Craigslist versus Amazon, right? Going from a Craigslist model where you have buyers and sellers, but everything happens off platform, and more of it happening on platform, which just makes it easier for the broker. And then I'd say the other huge value prop of it is the change that's happened. One of the big changes in the market over the last 10 to 15 years is these app-centric carriers that do more and more are likely to go to the app. And if they're going to an app, where are they going? Well, they're going to go to DAT. They're going to go then to maybe a CH Robinson or TQL. And we want Convoy to be on that list. And for our carriers, it is first place they want to go. Yeah. And what does that mean? It means that if I'm a broker, I'm now getting access to that capacity that otherwise I would have had to call them after they've already gone through all those other apps. Right now, they're going to Convoy platform first, and I'm going to be right at the top of that list.
I think of with Uber Freight, and then we'll talk about Convoy, the broker for a second here. I think that they were too early. I think the market wasn't ready for that level of automation and what they were doing because, again, you hear from the driver community, they love the Convoy app, right? Yeah. So it's like they love the technology. And I look at with where things are today and what the way that brokering freight is, and people cannot like this when I say this, the way we're brokering freight today is not going to look like this in 12 months. Yeah. That might even be too long, right? Because there is going to be an absolute demand for faster and just more capabilities that are out there. I just truly think that it was just too early to market it by a couple of years. Again, I could be wrong, but I think the technology and what you guys are doing there, that is where the market is. And it's only going to drive that more and more. And especially as the driver population becomes younger, right? Because there is a big old school driver population out there who might not want to do the apps and everything else, but let's be honest, they're not going to drive forever. Yeah. That next generation of individuals that are out there, they're going to want to be app centric. They're not going to want to talk to people on the phone. I got a 14-year-old son. Yeah. He doesn't like talking on the phone at all.
And it's where the market is going.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I agree that it was too early. I think there was a bit of a catch-22 in that it was also a period where there was incredible investment available.
Yes.
And that set expectations that were just often unattainable. And it was on the expectation that these companies could continue to scale and that the tech would really drive those. And again, the market just is probably too early. Market not quite ready, but it continues to evolve in that direction. And this is quite common with any new tech or whole new model. You just go through adjustment and the trough of disillusionment and then recover. But I do think this is also where this tech or this capability still has a long way to go, and it's complementary to AI because it's really about. And again, if you think about your daily life and how you engage in the world, you can't imagine even if most things I buy on Amazon, I'm still going to go to Amazon and hit the button and book it. Right? I'm not going to call Amazon or take an inbound call from Amazon saying, "Hey, do you want to buy something?" Right? So if you think about the different surface areas and different ways that we execute, and for freight, it's a very particularly for small carrier, I may only be booking 2 to 3, 4 loads a week. So each one of those is incredibly important. Yeah. So do I want to offload that decision making? No, I still want to go someplace and hit a button. And where am I going to do that if I'm a carrier? I'm going to do it through an app. So the surface area is still there. And I don't think that goes away. And there's still a long way to go in terms of adoption. But we see it. Every year it's just the usage, the number of app-centric carriers, that capability continues to increase.
Yeah, I don't see a world anymore, Bill, and 12 months ago, maybe even 6 months ago, I wouldn't have had this opinion. But the more and more I personally use tech inside of my business, and I'm not an AI guru or anything like that, but I literally use it for so much now, and I can see the competitive advantage that it brings to my sales and in my company as a whole. And then I was recently, I'm in the process of reading a book called The Algorithm. He was Elon Musk's right-hand man at Tesla. I would highly advise you read this book. And I started drawing all the parallels because it's like they completely disrupted the auto industry, which was around since the early 1900s. Everybody, this is the way we've always done it. This is never going to change. And that's kind of the perception out there in freight right now, right? Like, I don't care what anybody says on any of these stages. That is still the mentality out there on the brokerage floor. Yeah. This is the way we've always done it. Yeah, AI, but like, it's not coming for my job. I read that book and I'm like, that's freight. This is how it's going to be done. I see it so much more clearly now because it's like, I think that we're not that far away from like a $10 to $15 million a head seat cost inside of freight brokerages with the right automation that's out there. Because it's like, and then like, how do we keep the same people working with us? And when you build that ecosystem, you have technology that the drivers want. And I think that was another big pushback as the drivers are like, I don't want this tech. The shippers are like, I don't want this tech. Now they're like, I need this tech. And then they're going to look to their brokers to deliver that for them.
Well, and I see it even within our own customer base because implementing Convoy platform, it's not simple because you're changing your process. And there are brokers on the, I'd say, far right of that curve that are saying, we're embracing automation, and they're using the FleetWorks, the Happy Robots, or the pallets, or the drum kits, or whatever. They're engaging with the AI companies, they're using Convoy platform, they're trying to drive automation. And we see companies that are 40, 50, 60% automated because in terms of the booking and the execution processes, because they've embraced all the tech. On the other side, you see companies that they may turn it on, but they kind of put it in the corner. They got one person that's using it, testing it out, they're not really embracing it. Or they can't, one thing in any of these systems, so you can imagine like freight booking, you have to be very thoughtful about how you set the prices, what range, and if you're going to let go of that, what controls you put in place. Yeah. And that's where I think it's very hard because almost every successful broker is founded on exceptional operations, which usually means you're very hands-on, you're very like into the weeds, you like to have a certain amount of control.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like high control. So it's very hard in this process too with AI or with automation via Convoy platform or other means to let go of the control. Like where do you draw those lines, and you kind of got to work your way into it. And we see that over and over. We also see most brokers, they'll turn it on and then they'll learn it and they use it more and they start to let the rain, let it loose a little bit more. And that's just, I think, a normal process of change. And it happens at a micro level at every single broker and on a macro level across the industry, where Tesla's a good example because, I think even 20 years ago, anybody could see that electric cars are probably where this is going to go. Yeah. You could see where the future is.
Exactly. There's going to be a market for it.
Yeah. But we just bought our first electric car, kind of late to the cycle, and I can't ever see not having an electric car now. It's just such a just does car stuff better. And as a car guy, I resisted it because I like my
you like
rumbling V8s.
Absolutely. No, I know, but like that's the thing is I'm going to draw that parallel to myself. Like I'm an old school freight guy, right? Like I come from a family of truck drivers. Like I grew up in this industry, Bill, in a certain way of doing it. And then when I'm looking at a lot of the tech that is out there right now, and then it's like, you're right. You're spot on with most solid brokerages are built off of solid operations. But I think where people are missing the mark is they think that they can just automate everything. But it's like, if you have bad processes, you just have automated bad processes at that point.
Yeah, that's the other thing that happens. And I say this quite a lot, is that people will just throw the AI, particularly on top of bad process. Mm-hmm. And also people won't think about it the right way because they'll say, well, it's not doing exactly what, I tried to replace Sue with AI and it didn't do exactly what Sue did, and thereby it doesn't work, or there's one issue. Versus it's just like any new tech, you kind of have to figure it out, and you got to learn it. You got to feel it out, and just build expertise. And that's where I think there's people that are definitely learning faster and they're going to be ahead of the curve, and others, and the farther behind you on that curve, like there's still plenty of time to catch up, and we're still very early, I think, in this.
That was going to be my next follow-up here is because I think like that's one thing that a lot of individuals like, because the majority of businesses are small businesses. They might not have a budget for an AI tool that is out there. That's why I always tell everybody, like, utilize Gemini, utilize ChatGPT. You don't need to know how to be proficient in it yet, but you should at least try and integrate it into your day somehow, just to get a familiarity with it. Because what you'll come to realize is it's not as complex as you think. And I think anytime new technology or new industries come about, everybody thinks they can't understand it. It is about as easy to use as possible. But what I like is I can use it to check my own processes, my own way of doing it. Hey, view me as you're my chief sales officer right now. Does this look, or where can this improve? And that's like the biggest eye openers I've seen. And then especially as a bootstrap founder here, I'm having it be my AI CFO. I'm uploading my P&L to it. And I'm like, find the anomalies. What can I reduce? How do I reduce my expenses? And and again, it's like, am I using everything it says to do? No, I'm not. But I'm also learning like, okay, these capabilities are not limited at all. And how much more output can I do? Right. Because how much, we were talking, you brought up Amazon a little bit earlier. Amazon has set the bar that we need it faster, cheaper, and more visibility. That is only going to bleed into full truckload. I don't care what anybody says. That will be the reality soon.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say with that, which is with Amazon now, if you think about all the things that you don't need or don't check, like I can't remember, maybe once in a while I'll check tracking on Amazon, but hardly ever.
For sure.
As where when I first started using Amazon, I remember like pretty consistently, like, okay, when's it going to get here? Like checking it, tracking it. Right. And that trust slowly builds because the process gets better. You get familiar with it. You change your own operating mode. Right.
Yeah.
And the number of things we buy on it just goes up and up and up.
Yeah.
And that's where the tech just continues. It's only like people say this all the time. It's only like it's as bad as it will ever be today. It's only going to get better.
Yes.
It's only going to continue to get refined.
How do you think then that, from your perspective, you've been in freight for a long time. You've been on the tech side of freight for a long time as well, Bill. What fundamental changes do you see to the brokerage process here as this continues to evolve and get better?
I think the procurement and the long tail procurement and the last minute sourcing is where you're going to see continual automation, and also all the back office processes, as well as like inbound call and inbound call management. I think all of that, those processes will continue to get more and more automated. Your negotiation, your RFP management, you're still going to want to, of course, have some oversight, strategic oversight. I think the particular customer, like every customer, they need touch points. They need MBRs, QBRs, like management. There's the process progress. Like they are also pushing the envelope. So they need people on the other side. They're going to push along with them, which is why I think that relationship never goes away either. The way that I actually wrote an article a couple weeks back where I used the analogy of the financial industry, where when the ATMs came out originally, there was all sorts of ink spilled about how, bank tellers are going to be, there's no more bank tellers. Well, what happened? The ATMs came out. There are actually more bank tellers. They have more offices because it's more efficient because the ATMs took away the grunt work.
Yeah.
The tellers could focus on the higher order task.
Yeah.
But conversely, when the E-Trade and digital brokerages launched, that pretty much ended the floors of the NYSE and CBOT and other so those tradering worlds didn't exist anymore. But then if you look across that industry, you still got mutual fund managers, financial advisors. Like there's all sorts of roles that have persisted and haven't evolved significantly, but have gotten, I'd say, more efficient.
Yeah.
But the expertise layer has really not been disrupted. It's mainly that frontline transactional execution layer that in the financial industry got disrupted, or the banking industry got disrupted. And I think similarly, we're going to see that in brokerage. But so much of brokerage is not the transactional management. There's so much more to it. And it really is about how can you be a strategic partner, a thought partner? Like how can you push the envelope and service envelope with your partners? I think that's what's going to be differentiated.
Do you see a day and age where RFPs go away and their data is so fast and so much readily available, it can be processed at such a high speed that even the most highest volume shippers out there are going to be able to get it down within a couple of pennies of what they're going to pay for freight today?
This is something that I used to believe quite strongly when we started Uber Freight, because my thesis was always that if you made spot execution easier and easier and easier, and spot pricing more readily available, and you had instant pricing APIs and instant execution APIs, would that move more freight away from RFPs? I think the reason you will still have RFPs is there are, on the other side, there's capital investments. And there's also just there's always going to be the highly consistent lanes where it's going to be dedicated. And then there's some level right above dedicated where you want contract lanes because it may not be as consistent as dedicated, but it's consistent enough that The carriers should be able to manage the fleet, to be able to find backhauls, right, in their common dense lanes. And so you kind of think about the network as this layer cake of densities and qualities of freight that require different solutions. Well, there's always going to be some dedicated. There's probably always going to be some contracted. So I don't think the RFP totally goes away, but the percent of freight in contracted may go down. Because if you go back 20 years, I think this is, with a lot of Fortune 500 shippers, there's always this incentive, just throw everything into the RFP.
Yeah.
And I remember at Coyote that Coca-Cola started sharing their weekly volumes for each of the lanes and these little spark lines. And you'd see a lot of lanes that would just pop up for 2 months and go away. Well, why are they in the RFP at all? That should have been a mini bid, or should have been like a spot, or it just doesn't make sense to go in the RFP. So over time, less and less, has shown up in the RFP, and shippers have gotten smarter about how to parse their freight out. Well, I think as freight just becomes more real time, more immediate, and pricing does get better, you'll see more freight. But I don't think it's one of those that it's going to be all or nothing. It's just a gradual shift to more freight into spot, which ultimately should be to the benefit of brokers. But of course, I'm saying that while we've been in this record long bear market,
for sure.
When you're in a market like that, well, of course, shippers want certainty. They're just going to push the rates down. Yep. Rates aren't moving. Great. I can continue to negotiate, squeeze, limit my carriers. Brokers benefit from volatility, and we have not had that volatility lately. Yeah. But I think that's fighting a trend that more freight will become spot over time. And as brokers are more efficient, that also, because the other thing, think about all the automated pricing. Yeah. I remember, back at Coyote days, we couldn't get to every single price, or you'd have one person, you don't know the quality, right? Or it's impossible to price every single lane accurately. Roll the tape forward, Uber Freight, we had 100% pricing coverage. It was totally automated. And now those tools are more broadly available. There's all sorts of companies that offer, and I'd say the companies that are jumping into AI with even like dipping one toe in tend to go to quoting first. Like, how can you manage my email quotes so I want to get instant response? Because every quote is positive ROI, meaning you should never not quote a load. I used to drill this into the team at Uber. It's Friday night, and you have a last minute load come through. Maybe you don't think you have any capacity. It's hazmat reefer. Yeah, no, for sure. Through a winter storm. Yeah. Just, it's $12,000. Every once in a while you get that 12. They'll say, great, 12,000. Like, oh, okay. Now we got to work. But don't not quote it. Yeah. It's like, and this is where, and those are the types of opportunities where you make money, right? It's quite often it's a Pareto distribution where just a small set of loads is where you make all your profit. Yeah. And so you got to get the quote out. And that's where I think AI is really making an impact. And you see, I think that's where the companies that leaned in first saw the benefit is, okay, all of a sudden I'm getting more spot activity. I'm getting these spot loads, and maybe I was quoting them kind of high, but I'm still getting some percentage of those that fall out because other people aren't quoting. Yeah. But of course, that's going to drive. There's a bit of an arms race there too, because then everybody's quoting. And for sure, Bill, I appreciate it. There's so much to digest when we talk about topics like this out there. But one thing I think most people need to truly rely on is the playing field will never be more level than the market that we're about to embark upon. But and the other thing I'll say on that is, everybody's figuring out right now. So you want to be in the mix because the ground's continually shifting. And I was going to say that the degrees of separation could further and further here as this, continues to evolve, because it does go at such a high pace. But Bill, thank you so much for your time today. Absolutely. That is going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. As always, if you got value in what you heard and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the show, you guys. And if you're feeling ambitious, rank it on iTunes and Spotify, because if you see value, your network's going to see it as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Came back with a bang, window down, yelling out money, anything. Ayy, ooh, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when I'm getting to the bag. Ayy, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the